Start, sir.
Sure.
Good afternoon, students, and my dear faculty members. Today we have amongst us Dr. Aditya Jindal from Chandigarh. First of all, before I tell you anything about sir, happy World Physiotherapy Day to all of you. Yesterday, sir, we were having our World Physiotherapy Day. And today we are arranging this lecture for our students to highlight the importance of COVID-19 for our students and role played by physiotherapists in that. So about yourself, sir, you have done your DNB medicine from Sir Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi. Then after that, you worked as senior resident in the Department of Medicine at PGI Chandigarh, from where you also joined your postdoctoral course in the Department of Pulmonary Medicine and was awarded a degree of DM Pulmonary and Critical Care Medicine, June 13. And you are very well trained in interventional bronchoscopic procedures, including endobronchial and transbronchial biopsies, bronchoalveolar lavage, then conventional transbronchial needle aspirations. I think you are trained in all the procedures related to our lungs. Then pulmonary system also, precisely. And he is also trained in advanced bronchoscopic techniques such as organ plasma coagulation, endobronchial and cryotherapy also. And he has assisted and independently performed over 300 cases of endobronchial ultrasound, guided transbronchial needle aspiration, and many number of international and national publications in journals of repute. Then attended many conferences at both national as well as international level. And so you have also undergone training in the field of sleep medicine and lung cancer chemotherapy, and with extensive experience in the critical care medicine, including ventilatory management, intubation, then central venous catheterization, then percutaneous tracheostomy, critical care, thoracic ultrasound, and all other ICU procedures. We are really grateful, sir, that you spare time from your busy schedule. It seems you are still sitting in your clinic only, and that you have agreed to interact with our students and highlighting the scenario of COVID-19 for our students. Thank you very much, sir, for sparing time. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Amandeep, for your kind introduction. And I would like this to take this opportunity to wish everybody happy or happy physiotherapy day. I think it was yesterday, as you said, but
I thought yesterday, sir.
wish everybody a belated day. While you were chatting, this coronavirus epidemic or the pandemic has changed the scenario throughout the world, and India, of course, has been hit pretty bad, and it is still rising, and nobody knows when this thing will end. So I would like to shed some light on how this thing occurs, what are the clinical symptoms, how to recognize, how to treat, and how to prevent this. And I would like to share with all of the participants that the only treatment which has actually shown to have a definite benefit in this thing is a physiotherapy maneuver. So in which we prone the patient and it leads to increase in the oxygenation, and this has shown to be the only thing actually which is actually helping patients. The other antivirals, other medicines are just supportive, and this is among the mainstays of treatment right now. So I think I'll start my presentation.
Let me. I will. Shall I start or I will do that, sir? No worries. Okay,
I
fine.
think has it started? Has it started or not? I can't see that on my screen. Yes. I hope you can see my slide.
Yeah, it's visible, sir.
Okay, thank you. So I'll be talking about COVID-19
Welcome.
and or the coronavirus 19. And as you all know, the outbreak of this disease was from China in the Wuhan province, and there was a wet market there, a live animal market, and from there uh, it is postulated that the virus has spread from some animals, probably bats, and this has, however, there is no conclusive sort of evidence, but based on the previous records of the SARS-1 coronavirus, which occurred few years ago, 10 years ago, where the spread was from bats to pangolins to human beings, it has been postulated that this SARS-2 coronavirus is also a sort of spread from there. And subsequently, there was a person-to-person transmission, and the virus spread rapidly throughout the world. And as everybody can actually has known, there's been a lot of debate and everything. Now, this is an electron microscopic picture of the coronavirus, and you can see that there is a central virus and sort of surrounding particles, almost like a crown, and that is why the name of the coronavirus comes about. It is because of this corona or crown. So, Latin corona is the name given to the crown. That is one. This is a cross section of the sun. You can see that the outside part of the sun is called the corona. So based on that sun-like particles, this is how the name of the coronavirus has been given. Now the coronavirus enters the respiratory tract either through the nose or the mouth, and sometimes through the conjunctiva also. And it enters the cells of the respiratory tract, and there, while entering the cell, it acquires a sort of layer from the host cell membrane, and then replicates inside the cell, and then starts producing its genetic material and infects the cell. And this is finally, it sort of takes over the host cell and produces thousands and thousands of particles, which go on to further infect other surrounding cells and the whole body. So the main organ that is involved, of course, is the respiratory tract. And this is just to give you an overview of the whole respiratory tract, from the external areas, nasal cavity, to the pharynx, the oral cavity, the larynx, esophagus, and this is the trachea, which divides into the right and left main bronchus, and further on into the bronchioles, then the terminal bronchioles, respiratory bronchioles, and the alveoli. So the virus is deposited into the bronchioles and the alveoli and causes pneumonia-like infection, and it may be mild to severe, as we can see. Now the coronavirus is not unique as such. There are other respiratory viruses also, which occur throughout every year whenever there is a change of season. Generally, the older strains of coronavirus usually cause infections in the summers, and this is the sort of seventh coronavirus strain, and till now it has no seasonal predominance. It's been there, noticed to be there throughout the year. The other respiratory viruses include the rhinovirus, adenovirus, Coxsackie viruses, para-influenza viruses, etc. And these are the sort of the known coronavirus strains which were prevalent previously. And this severe acute respiratory syndrome, this virus has been, this caused the earlier SARS pandemic around 10 to 12 years ago. Again, started from China only, and the MERS syndrome started from Middle East, from camels, about 2-3 years ago. It was also caused by a coronavirus. So what are coronaviruses? Coronaviruses are a large family of viruses that are common in people and many different species of animals like camels, cattle, cats, and bats. And rarely these animal coronaviruses can infect people and then spread between people, such as the old viruses I had mentioned. And because there is no immunity to these kinds of viruses, they spread rapidly. It's like tossing a matchstick, a burning matchstick into a pile of straw, and this leads to a wildfire. So the same thing has happened because there is no immunity at all in human beings, so it has spread rapidly throughout the world, especially with the world becoming so closely knit. There is so much interaction between different countries. It's almost like a single thing. Earlier on, there used to be some separation, but now the infection can spread extremely rapidly. And this is a beta coronavirus like the MERS and the SARS coronaviruses, and all of three of these have their origins in bats. And this is how the virus looks on the I showed you a photo earlier on. This is just a schematic to show that you can see that the virus RNA and the nucleoprotein, and there is the envelope around it, and there are these spike glycoproteins. This actually looks, the complete virus looks like this, and this, the name is derived from the Latin word corona, which means a crown or halo. And this is also reminiscent of the solar corona, that the glare surrounding the sun. So the corona, the name comes from there. Now, what is the type of disease? The most people infected with corona or the COVID-19 virus have mild disease and recover, and the case fatality rate in India is among the lowest in the world, at around 1.8%. It is falling actually daily. However, there are some pockets in India where the death rate is higher, and Punjab actually, unfortunately, is among the few states which has a higher death rate as compared to the rest of the states. And the causes for this, we can only postulate, but it is possible that because of the presence of increased comorbidities like obesity and diabetes and other diseases, alcoholism maybe, that the death rate is higher in Punjab. Overall, around 80 to 85% of cases have mild to moderate diseases, and which includes very mild fever, maybe just like a non-pneumonia or maybe very mild pneumonia cases. About 10 to 15% have severe, moderate to severe disease, and these people have sort of dyspnea or breathlessness, increase in the respiratory rate, decrease in the oxygen saturation, and or lung infiltrates, which involve more than 30% of the lung field within 24 to 48 hours of infection. And about 5 to 7% are critical, and these patients develop respiratory failure, septic shock, and or multiple organ dysfunction and failure. Asymptomatic infections have been also reported. Earlier on, the asymptomatic cases were lower, but now more and more asymptomatic patients have been reported, and these people do not have any symptoms in themselves, but because they are unaware of their disease, they might be among the causes of spread of this infection. And as I was already mentioning, the case fatality rate is roughly around 1.8% in the whole of India, and it is about 2.3 or 2.6, 2.4% in Punjab and Maharashtra. These are the two states where the case fatality rate is highest. And this is just an old graph, sort of to show the fatality rate, but we'll be more focusing on the fatality rate. These are the people who have underlying diseases, and we'll see the people who have cardiovascular disease, diabetes, or chronic respiratory diseases. They are more prone to get severe infection, and they have higher chances of dying. So these are along with the elderly population, so these are the people who should be most protected and kept safe from this coronavirus infection. Young people and children in general have very mild infection and recover fast. So the sign and symptoms range from non-specific, like there can be no symptoms. The typical sign and symptoms include fever, which is present in almost 80 or almost 90% of patients, dry cough, fatigue, sputum production in some patients, breathlessness maybe there only in some 20% of patients, so 1/5 of patients, sore throat, headache, body aches or myalgias, and nausea, vomiting, nasal congestion, and diarrhea. Some people present with diarrhea only, so you would suspect that a person coming to you with diarrhea or loose motions would have some gastrointestinal infection, but they can have corona. They should be suspected in all patients. some very typical symptoms for this virus are the loss of taste and loss of smell. In fact, some people even say that considering the situation, if a person has a loss of smell sensation or loss of taste sensation, there is no need for the testing also. And these people should be declared to have coronavirus infection only and treated accordingly. So how is the diagnosis made? There are 2 or 3 methods of making the diagnosis. The first is the RT-PCR, or the reverse transcriptase PCR method for checking the genetic material, and there are some blood tests like the antigen test and the antibody tests. The common way to get the RT-PCR is the nasal and the oral swabs, and the turnaround time varies from few hours to 1 or 2 days depending on which method is used. And this is the most accurate and sensitive test to pick up the infection. There is a rapid antigen test which can give the result very quickly, but one should remember that the false negative rate of the rapid antigen test is very high. If it is a positive test, it means it is positive. If it is a negative test, it should be confirmed by the RT-PCR test, because otherwise it will miss a large number of patients. And as far as the antibody tests are concerned, they are generally meant for checking the immunity levels. They generally have no role in the diagnosis of the disease. Other samples can also be taken, like recent studies have come about saliva RT-PCR tests, and they have shown to be comparable with the oral or nasal swabs, but it is not yet available in our country. While the other sources of samples, like the lavage, lung biopsies, etc., they are of course not needed most of the time. It is very difficult to isolate it from the urine or stool sample, so it is not done.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
I want to give a small message to the students. Those students who want to ask questions from sir, those who are having any doubt, they are requested to kindly post the messages, post their questions in the message box. Right? Sir will be addressing to your questions after his lecture. So if you are having any doubt, you can put up your doubt in the chat box. Fine? Thank you. Sir, you can continue, please.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll straight away go to the how this sort of virus is transmitted, and I think that might be the most important thing for the students. And the transmission of this is airborne and fomite-borne infection. It is transmitted via droplets and fomites during close and unprotected contact between an infector and an infectee. The airborne transmission was earlier on not thought to be important method, but now it is more or less been accepted that airborne transmission occurs, especially in close contact. So that is up to 6 feet or 2 meters distance, it is highly possible that it is airborne, but it does not remain in the air for long durations. So it is not airborne in that sense that people who are standing far away, there is a huge room and maybe patient coughs once and it will not remain suspended in the air like tuberculosis does. So that is the difference as compared to the proper airborne infections. Fecal shedding has been shown from some patients. So fecal shedding has been shown in some patients, and there is no known pre-existing immunity. So this is just a graphic to show that a person who is sick, when that person coughs or they spreads droplets into the air, they can either go directly into the eyes, nose or mouth of a susceptible person, of a healthy person, and that person can develop infection. While the other thing is that when patient coughs and they form droplets, which these can fall on other devices like hands, doors, knobs, train straps, pens, computer accessories, chopsticks, and other things, of course, stairs, and even on the outside of the face mask. So these are all the fomites. This is the main method of spread of this virus. So that is why all this focus on sanitization and thing. Yeah, so face mask. So face masks are a major method to sort of uh, prevent from this infection. And disposable face masks block large particles from entering the mouth. So there are many types of face masks. So some are the common green colored surgical masks, and other are the N95 or other masks. And the normal face masks, the surgical masks are meant for they're meant for use in surgeries actually, so that the surgeon's hair and saliva and breath do not go into the surgical area. As far as coronavirus are concerned, they are not really useful for preventing the spread, especially in hospital settings where the chances of infected patients are higher. But in a community area, in around when you're roaming around in the park or anything, these face masks are okay, good enough to do that. Not in high exposure settings, but in low exposure settings, they will work. The N95 masks are, of course, far more effective at shielding from these illnesses, and these people who are actually who have coronavirus should wear all these masks to prevent spread of disease from others, and other people should also wear, especially if you're caring for somebody and if you're going to a sort of to to a public area. And even the traditional methods like wearing chunnis and scarves, etc., gamchas can also be used in low exposure settings. Not, of course, when one is coming to a hospital or where there are lots of patients or confirmed patients. Other public health prevention and control measures include screening of patients at any shop or any place, so that any person who has this virus can be picked up and appropriately referred to a care facility. Uh, of course, restriction of movement, social distancing, and workplace closures have all been tried. I think the closures probably have failed here, but the social distancing should be maintained as far as possible. Masks should be worn in public, and these are among the most effective preventive measures for this thing. And the quarantine, mandatory and voluntary quarantine, has been used for patients who are or people who are suspected to have this. So the difference between quarantine and isolation is that the quarantine is for patients who is for people who have not been suspected to have the disease, but it has not been confirmed, while the isolation is for confirmed patients. So sort of that is the difference. Okay, so these are again some preventive measures for hand washing. Try and not touch your face. Uh, we keep on touching our face if we notice that there is we keep on touching our face lots and lots of times. So we should avoid this because they can spread the disease through the conjunctiva, through our eyes. And if you have to wash your hands with soap first, or sanitizer, of course, is not useful. It can cause chemical irritation in the eyes. Uh, One should wash with our hands with soap for at least 40 seconds before we are confirmed that that the we should wash the hands for at least 40 seconds with the soap and water, and with sanitizer for 20 seconds. So then it is effective. And thorough hand washing should be done. So the back of the hands, between the fingers, under the nails, the front of the hand, the thumbs, the wrist, should sort of be all of them should be cleaned properly. And especially wash hands before eating and after being out in the public. So whenever you come home, first thing is to do is wash your hands, mop your, clean your face, and then sort of go into your room and interact with everybody else. Okay, so what is the coming to the treatment of COVID? And I think the this might be the most relevant, and because the as I've already mentioned, the most sort of important treatment of COVID is the physiotherapy maneuvers like proning the patient. As such, there is no proven antiviral drug as yet for COVID. The treatment is mostly symptomatic, so rest, isolation. If there is fever, give analgesics, or pay for pains analgesics, antipyretics for fever, any for cough or throat antihistaminics, and we should maintain the hydration of the patient so that they do not get dehydrated, because sometimes there is a lot of liver involvement and these patients have significant loss of appetite. If there is a severe pneumonia or respiratory distress, then the patient should be admitted. Otherwise, mild to moderate cases can easily be handled at home. One should be, of course, in consultation with the doctor so that doctor knows what is going on. But I feel there is no need to admit patients who have mild disease or moderate disease, and especially because our region, our North India region, Chandigarh, Punjab, and Haryana, right now it is at a peak. So probably same thing will remain for at least 2 weeks or so, and the cases will start coming down. So there is no need to admit the mild patients; they can be very easily handled at home. And of course, let's come to the prone positioning. And prone positioning has shown actually turning over the patient. This is called awake proning. So if you know about treatment of normal ventilated patients in patients who have ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, there also prone position has been shown, but that is shown to be helpful. But that is for people actually who are on mechanical ventilation and who are intubated. In corona patients, these patients are awake. They do not have sort of any ventilation, but they just have hypoxia. Maybe the saturation is in the range of 90%, 91, 92%. And just putting them in the prone position and telling them to lie there for a few hours may improve their symptoms and their oxygen saturation and X-rays within 48 hours. And a lot of people have noticed this. And what is the physiological reason of improve in oxygenation due to prone positioning? And this is because the dorsal areas in the normal supine position, the back of the lung, the dorsal areas are compressed by the weight of the abdominal cavity and the mediastinum, and therefore there is the ventilation is not adequately distributed towards the dorsal areas of the lungs. But once the patient is put in the prone position, these dorsal areas open up and they have a very high number of alveolar units, and so the ventilation perfusion ratio improves. There is a recruitment of more alveolar areas for gas exchange. And in addition to that, there is also a sort of decrease in the over distension of these areas. And with each breath, there is in patient or on the ventilator, there is a sort of a decreased risk of the ventilator-induced lung injury. So this is all about prone positioning, and most of the time what we recommend to patients who have mild sort of infections is that you keep changing the position. Start with half an hour in the prone position, half an hour on the left side, half an hour on the right side, and half an hour in the sitting position, and then keep on increasing the duration so that it is up to 2 hours in the prone position, 2 hours left side, 2 hours right side, and 2 hours sitting. So this can be done, and if there is a good response, then the amount of time spent in the prone position can also be increased. So in summary, for prevention and control, I would like to say that there is no vaccine available at this time to prevent the COVID-19, and of course there are lots of trials to develop one. And the Russian vaccine, everybody has heard of the Russian vaccine, and the other was sort of the you can say that the Oxford vaccine, which was the most promising. However, the just news has come that the Oxford vaccine trial has been halted because some of the participants have developed a sort of unknown illness. So though it is part of the trial vaccine, it is again a setback, I would say, to the development of the vaccine. The other thing that the illness can range from mild to severe. Some people have died from their illness, of course. People with advancing age or chronic conditions such as heart disease, lung disease, diabetes, or immune problems are at higher risk for severe infections. The key to prevention is control the spread from person to person, and control measures should be followed by people in the community. Take home message is that there is nothing to panic. It is COVID-19 is an infectious condition, but it is less severe and fatal than many other diseases which are already there in the community. It is important to adopt good hygienic measures and universal precautions. Avoid unproven treatments. That is also a main thing because they can have more side effects rather than anything else. And do not believe everything that is there on the net or Facebook or WhatsApp. Rumor mongering is among the main problems in this. This is a pandemic, infectious pandemic as well as a media pandemic. So this has caused major problems in the treatment and caused such a massive amount of problem that it created a lot of panic among people. And when in doubt, consult credible and reliable sources of information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for such an enlightening lecture. You have, I don't think you have left any unanswered question related to this pandemic of COVID-19. In a brief presentation, you have very well taken all the aspects about what are the symptoms or how the origin, also then diagnosis and various test methods and everything you have beautifully explained, sir. Thank you very much. Sir, we are having few questions from our students. One of the students wants to ask about RT-PCR test.
Okay.
And is there any related to that only? Is there any false positive and false negative ratio also? This much percentage of test can be can give false positive or false negative readings?
Yes, so the overall accuracy of this test is somewhere in the range of 70 to 80%. The actual false positive and false negative ratios have not been calculated very accurately because of the paucity of data. But probably as time goes, we will have more scientific analysis on how to exactly use this test. But I would say that if the test is positive, the false positive rate is sort of low. False negative rate is still there. So it might miss some cases, but if it is positive, it is reasonably accurate.
Right. Also, one of our student wants to ask about how to tackle with the stress and emotions during this time, like we are seeing or we are studying in few of the newspapers also that all the patients are doing some recreative activity. Do you think patients will be of different grades of their symptoms, and keeping them together will be fine, sir?
If people are sort of positive, already positive, there is no problem in keeping them together. But where there is a difference that some people might be positive and some people might be suspected.
Yes.
There and some people are asymptomatic and we don't know their status. There, of course, distance should be maintained.
Right.
As far as the mental status is concerned.
Yes. Continue, please.
Yeah, as far as the mental status of people who don't have corona and who have corona are concerned, of course, it is very difficult because these are very testing times. But I would say that avoid reading too much about corona, especially focus on other things, and keep a positive attitude. I, I especially feel that more one reads about all these things, especially the rumors on social media, the more one feels worried and tense on how to handle these things. So do your work, take all the precautions, and let's hope that it goes down very fast.
Yeah, I also personally believe that it has like started affecting our mind more than our lungs.
Yes, yes.
Okay, sir. A small question more like students want to clarify about the importance of mask in to prevent COVID-19 spread. Is it really helpful
Yeah,
regarding
so masks
the
definitely are, yeah, they are very helpful. So I was mentioning about the masks. So there are basically three types of masks, one can say. One are the normal masks, or the surgical mask, or the sort of the any cloth that we can put over our face. Second are the particulate, the respirator masks, which are the N95 and the FFP2 and 3 masks. And third are the respirators. So the normal sort of the like even a chunni or a gamcha or a surgical mask, they have roughly 50 to 70% efficiency in preventing spread of coronavirus, and these can be used only in sort of places where the incidence is low. So maybe somebody is coming, they will prevent those settings. But where the number of patients is high, maybe in the care center, at home where there is a positive patient, or in crowded areas, there these are not very much useful. The other masks are the N95 and the FFP3 masks. So these masks prevent almost 95% of the particles from reaching the face or the nose. So there are three certifications in this. One is the N95, which is by the American guidelines, by the FDA, actually, the American body. The FFP2 and 3 is by the European body, while the KN95 mask follows the Chinese certification. So we have a
okay?
lot of N95 masks, and FFP2 and 3 masks are sort of less available here, while the KN95 masks are very freely available. Roughly, they are roughly equivalent. All three masks are equivalent. But of course, if you can get hold of a FFP3 or a, or a sort of a N95 mask, that is uh, definitely better as compared to a KN95 mask. And these should be worn in settings like which are actually in the hospitals, in COVID care centers, while dealing with patients who are family members who are positive, those kind of things. And the third masks are the respirators, which you can see people who are in movies who are, and they look very different. Where the medical procedures are be done, like bronchoscopy and all those kind of things.
Right. Uh, a small question more, sir. That is there any uh, stages of COVID-19 also like is there? Are there any stages, or it is according to the symptoms only,
So
like mild,
actually,
moderate?
yes, so it is according to the symptoms only. So you have asymptomatic patients, mild,
Yeah.
moderate, and severe infection, and generally the course is over a period of 10 to 14 days. And most people who cross over the 10th, 11th day after the exposure, they generally settle down comfortably. And that is the
Hmm.
peak time, when on the 10th to 12th day, that is the peak time when people actually have problems.
Yeah. Fine, sir. And is like outside environment is also playing any role in the spread of this virus?
So the environment as such, it is not a airborne infection, as I was mentioning about tuberculosis. So in fact, in the open air, it is always better. There is less chance for spread of this disease as compared to the as compared to the other. It is mainly spread from person to person.
Okay. Right. And sir,
Somebody else is on.
yes, yes, sir. Continue,
Yes,
please.
I think somebody asked a question about like why infection in people with cancer can be a
Yeah.
concern. So yeah,
Yes,
see,
sir.
anybody who has pre-existing diseases, of course, there is a high because their body immunity is already low, and super added infection like coronavirus can actually lead to a decrease in the problem with. So any cancer patients are already having chemotherapy, radiotherapy, all those things. So their body immunity is very low. Cancer itself can cause is causing the low immunity. So any infection can tip the balance and lead to severe illness.
Right. And is there any special recommendations for dietary intake for these patients, sir?
Actually, there is no special indication. Some people are giving vitamin C and zinc and all those things, and there is no hard and fast evidence or anything. So probably just take a normal diet, drink plenty of fluid.
Right, right, right.
I think somebody also asked about which particular drugs are being given to people, to patients, when the patient is being diagnosed. Uh, so generally, the commonly used drugs are azithromycin and HCQS. And the HCQS has recently been, there has been some debate about the usefulness of HCQS. Some studies are against it, some for it. A recent very large study from Belgium showed very good evidence. Steroid use of steroids has been associated with benefits, especially in people who have low oxygen levels, especially use of dexamethasone. Remdesivir has been shown to reduce the incidence of sorry, the duration of illness. Again, in people who have low oxygen levels, there is a drug called favipiravir which is used in mild to moderate patients, but the evidence for that is also it is 50-50, I would say. And for severe infections, we have tocilizumab and high dose steroids, plasma therapy, all those things.
Right, sir. And a student has a query related to can a patient who is treated for corona, can he or she acquire the infection again?
So right now, in general, if you speak about most infections will leave some immunity, and it's not usually people do not develop those things again. And also in corona, right now there is no documented case of reinfection as such. There is a
Okay.
lot of suspicion, but there is no documented case. So it is just like, but I think one should actually, because of disease, so one should still keep with all the precautions.
Hmm. Right. Right, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Uh,
Okay.
Thank you for sparing time and interacting with our students, taking up their queries, and it's like very important that we should have knowledge about this present pandemic, and that knowledge is coming from an expert like you is like really worthy so that we can stay away from different rumors about this problem. And really, sir, on behalf of my team, we are very thankful to you that you spare time, and we hope that in near future again we will like to invite you for a like maybe a physical session here after the things normalize. I
Thank
really
you very
thank you
much.
for
Thank you for inviting me, and I hope everybody had something to something useful for them.
You have given them quite a number of take-home messages with them about this pandemic, sir. Really grateful to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ji. Thank you, sir. Thank you.